Welcome to Handmade History. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Sonia.
And today we are talking about macrame and knotting. And this episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Folkwear Patterns. Ever wondered how to recreate the elegance of a 1930s evening gown? Or the practical beauty of a French work shirt? Folkwear Patterns bring authentic, historic, and traditional clothing designs from around the world directly to your sewing table. For over 45 years, Folkwear has meticulously researched and recreated sewing patterns for garments from different cultures and time periods, from Victorian walking skirts to Japanese hoppy coats. Each pattern includes detailed historical context and authentic construction techniques that honor the original garments. Whether you're a costume designer, history enthusiast, art-to-wear seamstress, or simply appreciate timeless style, Folkwear helps you create clothing with a story. Experience the world's textile heritage through your own hands. Visit www.folkwear.com today and sew something extraordinary.
Thank you, Folkwear.
And now, on to the show. So, Sonia, did you make macrame bracelets and chokers, or was that strictly a 90s thing?
No, we made them.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, at middle school, for sure.
Did you put beads on them?
Probably.
That was the big thing when I was in my middle school years.
Mm-hmm.
Fun. Yeah, I made a ton. I learned from like a little kit that I got.
Yeah, we probably had, there are like different craft books we would get. And I kind of remember having one of those.
Oh, yeah, I totally had a macrame like chokers and bracelets one. I wonder if you inherited it then.
Probably, yeah.
Nice. I think it was popular in the 90s because the 90s had a miniature 70s revival in like fashion. So it's my hypothesis. But All right, shall we get started? Want to kick us off, Sonia?
Yep. So macrame is a style of lace made by knotting cords. It uses two basic stitches, the square knot and the half hitch. And these can have other names. Mary Walker Phillips wrote in Step by Step Macrame, published in 1970, that, quote, there are various combinations of these knots, some distinctive enough to have their own names. Different texts refer to them under different names, but once seen, they can be recognized as old friends. Macrame is most similar to tatting, which uses a tiny shuttle and fine thread to make a type of knot that's called the lark's head knot. It's a very old craft, as humans have been making knots for as long as we have been humans, and perhaps even before, and we'll talk about this later. It typically uses a sturdy yarn or cord because knotting causes abrasion, and the earliest examples are of decoratively knotted fringe on the hems of woven textiles.
Yes. The word macrame has murky origins. The first use of the word appears in a book called The History of Lace, written by Fanny Bury Palliser in 1865 or 1869. And we first mentioned this book in episode 9, A Brief History of Lace. Palliser writes, there exists a beautiful and ingenious work taught in schools and convents along the Riviera, which is the Italian coast of Liguria, where Genoa is located. It is carried to great perfection at Chiavari and also at the Albergo di Poveri in Genoa. You see it in every stage. It is almost the first employment of the fingers which the poor children of either sex learn. The art is principally applied to the ornamenting of huckaback towels, termed macrame, a long fringe of thread being left at each end for the purpose of being knotted together in geometrical designs. In a footnote, Palliser writes that macrame is a word of Arabic derivation used for denoting fringe for trimming, whether of cotton, thread, or silk. And other sources say that it comes from a Turkish word, makrama or mikrama, or an Arabic word, migrama, and that these words might mean towel, bedspread, fringe, or ornamental fringe. However, Google Translate did not agree. I looked up all these variations of these words in the various different languages, and I also looked up the words for towel, bedspread, fringe, and related words like lace, and there was no overlap. None of them sound like mikrama, makrama, or migrama.
However, there are two possible connections to the Arabic language. Virginia Harvey, who wrote a book called Macrame, The Art of Creative Knotting in 1966, wrote in an article that the word comes from macrama. The word macrame means their dowry in Arabic. This seems like a plausible derivation for the word macrame, as a dowry typically included textiles in Western cultures. However, in Islamic cultures, this word actually refers to goods that are paid by the groom's family to the bride. So it still may be connected, but it's a bit of a stretch, as women are very much associated with this craft in this part of the world.
And the second possible connection comes from our old friend, Thérèse de Dilmont. You may remember her from episode 3, The History of Cross-Stitch as We Do It Today. Dilmont wrote a book called The Encyclopedia of Needlework for a series called the Bibliothèque DMC, or the DMC Library. She writes that macrame is an Arabic word and that it, quote, reminds us of the wooden lattices in the windows of Eastern houses, doubtless familiar to many of our readers, under the name of mouchrabiyeh. Mouchrabiyeh, which is French, or moucharabi in English, comes from the word mashrabiyya in Arabic, which means bay, or mashrabi, which means bar, and it refers to a beautiful, intricate wooden grill for windows. It's often used on Islamic homes in the Middle East and Northern Africa, and it does look like knotted netting or perhaps even macrame. And to me, this seems like the most plausible origin, that there is some word that was the parent of both the word for macrame and the word for these window grills, mashrabiyya, or perhaps that one was the parent of the other. But overall, the origins of this word still remain a mystery.
Some of the earliest evidence of macrame is found in Assyrian relief carvings. Assyria was a Mesopotamian kingdom that lasted from about the 1300s BCE to 600 BCE. It was located in modern-day Iraq and northern Turkey and expanded to Syria and Armenia. This culture is famous for its monumental buildings. Its artists also made very detailed carvings, and some of these carvings are on display at the Met in New York City. And the detail is incredible. You can see fringe on the garments that the people are wearing has been decoratively knotted. According to the Textile Research Center, macrame has traditionally been made by women in Mediterranean countries, including Turkey, Syria, and Armenia. So it's possible that the macrame tradition in those countries is over 3,000 years old. This macrame is largely done to finish weavings. So if you picture a Turkish beach towel, like a large linen wrap, they always have fringe. And weavers use macrame to make the fringe fancier and more ornamental.
It's possible that macrame spread to Europe via Spain. In 711 CE, Arab Muslims from North Africa, also known as the Moors, invaded Spain. Tradition says that the Moors taught the Spaniards macrame. In Spain, macrame became associated with nuns who used it to decorate church textiles. And depictions of macrame are found in a painting in the Valladolid Cathedral that dates to the 1500s.
So in England, Queen Mary II is credited with spreading the craft. Mary has an interesting story, so I thought we could go down this minor rabbit hole. She was born in London on April 30th, 1662. And she married her cousin, William III, also known as William of Orange. William was famous for championing Protestantism. Mary was raised Protestant, although both of her parents were Catholics. William lived in the Netherlands, and so Mary went there for a few years, and this is where it is believed that she learned macrame. In 1688, William invaded England and overthrew James II, who was Mary's father, and Mary sided with her husband. There were some people in England who wanted Mary to be the sole ruler, however, they became joint rulers. And sometime in the late 1600s, she taught her ladies-in-waiting to macrame.
In Italy, there's a strong tradition of macrame. We briefly referenced it at the beginning of this episode. Fanny Palliser wrote about Italian macrame in her book about the history of lace. Mary Walker Phillips also mentions the Italian macrame style called cavandoli stitch, which was developed at the Casa del Sol in Turin, another school for children. It was created by Valentina Cavandoli, who was born in 1872, and it uses the half-hitch knot and 2 or more colors of cord. And you might recognize the cavandoli stitch, especially if you are a child of the 90s. It is the method that kids use to make wide friendship bracelets with designs or motifs on them. Did you ever make these, Sonia?
Yeah, for sure. So now let's talk about macrame in the Americas. Tradition holds that the Spaniards brought macrame to the indigenous people of the Americas. Indigenous people here made art with cord already. People in Mexico and South America used macrame to finish their shawls and other linens for the home. In Mitla, which is in Oaxaca, Mexico, macrame was made using hand-spun yarn. The style in Mitla emphasized the open, unknotted portions of the yarn, which curved when knotted to make beautiful scallop shapes. There are also both modern and historical examples of macrame as a way to finish the fringe on clothing and home linens in the Museo de Trajes, which translates to Museum of Suits or Museum of Clothing, in Bogota, Colombia, including some by modern artist Liliana Munoz.
And in the United States, macrame became popular during the Victorian era. Lace enjoyed a huge revival during this time, spurred on in part by the invention of lace-making machines. People were very much into documenting and preserving handmade lace and lace-making techniques, and macrame was a part of that. In Sylvia's book of macrame lace, published in 1890, the author writes, "This kind of fancy work is not exactly a novelty, except in the sense when anything becomes so old as to be forgotten, its revival has all the effects of a first appearance. It is a beautiful and effective lace, costing little difficulty to the worker, and useful in a variety of directions. It is an exceedingly fashionable occupation, and in addition to presenting our readers with the clearest instructions yet issued upon the subject, we have also the satisfaction of offering, in the present volume, the largest number and greatest variety of designs that have hitherto been collected together." Sylvia's designs included a parasol with macrame fringe, a window blind, a work bag for holding your handwork, and a, quote, bag for bathing dress that looked surprisingly modern to me. Even back in the late 1800s, macrame was done with thicker, sturdier cord than typical lace because it was knotted, and the stitches, of course, look exactly the same as modern macrame. Victorian macrame did have a bit more of an emphasis on the fringe aspect of the craft, and they had examples of curtains or room dividers that were made from macrame.
At this time, it also appears that macrame was made on a cushion, as other forms of lace were made. Thérèse de Dilmont, writing in 1890, showed macrame cord wrapped up on spools, just like thread for other lace making. Her book, Encyclopedia of Needlework, was written in collaboration with DMC, which makes embroidery floss. At this time, DMC also made different types of cotton and linen blend threads, which were good for macrame, and these were cataloged at the back of her book. However, some of her designs included lots of different colors, incorporating the multicolored thread that we have come to associate with DMC floss. Her designs included motifs like Cavandoli-style macrame, such as flowers, hearts, and zigzags.
But perhaps the era we most associate with macrame today in the United States is the 60s and 70s, the hippie era. Macrame experienced another revival in the U.S. during this time period. 2 books were written around this time, both of which we've already mentioned. Virginia I. Harvey wrote Macrame, The Art of Creative Knotting in 1966, and Mary Walker Phillips wrote Step-by-Step Macrame in 1970. Phillips mentions Harvey in her book. And these types of crafts that you find in these books are what you are most likely familiar with today. In Step-by-Step Macrame, Phillips shares how to make belts, wall hangings, planter holders, bracelets with beads, a pillow cover, a room divider, and even a rug. She recommends using a sturdy yarn made of linen, silk, or wool, or another type of thread like twine, jute, or cord. She also recommends using a piece of padded cardboard or board to work on, kind of a modern version of the Victorian lace cushion.
So why did it become so popular? At this time, fashion included homemade, organic-looking elements. And although Walker noted that her favorite material was a combination of silk and linen, macrame is ideal for affordable materials that you can buy at the hardware store, like twine or cotton cord. Macrame made from cotton or twine has that organic look. Simple tie-dye was also very popular at this time, which has an organic, homemade look that is also interesting to look at. Macrame, although intricate, is also simple to make, and as we've mentioned before, children have done it. So it's easy to teach and share with others and possible to learn from a book. It's also very portable and doesn't require very many tools at all, maybe a few pins and a piece of cardboard. So it's an ideal combination of cheap, portable materials and aesthetic appeal that was easy to share and learn, and something you can do while watching a concert, for example, or riding in a van.
And as I mentioned earlier, this exact same type of macrame became popular in the 90s when it had that minor hippie fashion revival. And I made all of my macrame from hemp cord. That was kind of that was the cool material. How about you, Sonia?
Hemp cord, yeah.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little and talk more generally about knotting. Macrame is a subset of knotting. We mentioned that it essentially relies on combinations of 2 different types of knots. But there are thousands of types of knots, and they range from simple to very complex. We also mentioned at the top of the episode that the history of knotting goes back as far as humanity and possibly even earlier. Studies have shown that wild apes can make reef knots, which are a simple knot that connects 2 cords. and granny knots, a slightly different version of the reef knot, and they can use these to make their nests. Chimpanzees can also possibly untie and retie knots that they are given. Researcher John Christopher Turner wrote, quote, "This at least suggests that the beginning of knot tying may well have preceded the evolution of the genus Homo."
So the invention of string was essential to human existence, and string and knots go hand in hand. Elizabeth Wayland Barber, author of women's work, The First 20,000 Years, writes, "So powerful is simple string in taming the world to human will and ingenuity that I suspect it to be the unseen weapon that allowed the human race to conquer the earth, that enabled us to move out into every eco niche on the globe during the Upper Paleolithic," which was roughly 20,000 years ago. We could call it the string revolution. Many tools important to human existence use knots: snares for catching small animals, rafts, bags for carrying things. A lot of evidence of human existence implies knots. If an archaeological site has piles of fish bones, we can surmise that they use nets to catch the fish, and nets are knotted. Beads lined up on the bodies that have been buried imply necklaces and knots. Very old depictions of knots also survived. Female figurines with decorative knotted belts have been found in Russia and the Czech Republic that date to more than 21,000 years ago.
There are a variety of interesting knotted objects found throughout human history, and I thought we would share two examples. First, around the time of the string revolution, we have found evidence of knotted skirts or girdles, not unlike the knotted belts we just mentioned. These knotted or string skirts are found on female figurines, sometimes called Venus figurines, and they date to 20,000 BCE. Many of these figurines are found in Ukraine and Russia, but also Denmark and northern Germany. And one of the actual skirts made of wool was found preserved in a bog in Egtved, Denmark, that dates to 2000 BCE. It included a woven belt, and the strings were knotted at the bottom. Interestingly, the same type of skirt was found in the Chilean desert in a town called Caserones. It was made from fiber from the camelid family of animals, which includes llamas, alpacas, vicuñas, and guanacos. Other similar skirts found in the Andes date to 5000 BCE. These examples and others are not useful skirts. They don't provide warmth or coverage. They are literally skirts made from string. And Barber theorizes that women wore these skirts to signal that they were ready to marry or have children. There is a Greek myth where Hera, the goddess, puts on, quote, "a girdle fashioned with 100 tassels," and then also borrows another girdle from Aphrodite to seduce the god Zeus. And this myth seems to support that theory that Barber puts forth. Women still wear ornamental fringed aprons today in Russia, Romania, Yugoslavia, Macedonia, and Albania.
The second very old fascinating use of knots that we are going to talk about is Peruvian quipus. Quipus are made from string. There is one long cord with lots of smaller cords hanging down from it. The hanging cords can have cords hanging from them. And it's not unlike a fringe macrame wall hanging. They can be made from cotton or from animal fibers, including camelids, as well as deer and vizcacha, which is a mountain rodent that looks a bit like a rabbit. They were used for counting and other record keeping. In an article for Spinoff magazine, Liz Hammond Karema writes that oral history tells of quipus used for record keeping and as letters, histories, and narratives. So a lot of information was encoded in the quipus. For example, cotton quipus were used for counting, while animal fiber ones were used for other records. The color of the fiber used could give information, as well as the direction of the twist of the string, so the direction that it was spun. The hanging cords have knots in them, and the type of knot used, as well as the distance from the top cord, was significant. An undergraduate at Harvard named Manny Medrano deciphered the way that quipus encoded kinship or family ties. He used a set of written census reports and compared them to quipus found in the same area at the same time, which is pretty cool. So they were used as early as 2500 BCE and up until the 1500s when the conquistadors came.
I was very impressed with Manny Medrano,
Yeah.
the undergrad. Yeah. Finally, we can't talk about knots without talking about sailors. Sailors have a long tradition of knot tying and an association with the art of knot tying. The same reasons that made macrame so popular in the hippie era make it a good craft for people on ships. It's portable, needs few or no tools, and is made from materials readily available on a ship like twine. And sailors, in fact, may be responsible for a lot of the spread of the craft of macrame. As early as the 1400s, European sailors may have traded knotted and macrameed objects like rum bottle covers with people in India and China. And the Seamen's Church Institute in New York City once held a huge picture frame made with traditional heavy seine twine. Mary Walker Phillips noted it in Step by Step Macrame. Decorative knotting on ships is part of marlinspike seamanship, which is a term that refers to everything related to knots, splicing, working with cable and wire rope, and making decorative ornaments from rope or line. One researcher referred to decorative knotting in marlinspike seamanship as jewelry for the ship. Some examples might include decoratively knotted handles for chests or fancy bell ropes. And a lot of these could be called macrame as well. In the U.S., the most famous book associated with the craft of knotting is the Ashley Book of Knots, written by Clifford Warren Ashley in 1944. It includes over 3,900 different knots. Ashley writes, "This book and a piece of cord will open a new and challenging world of practical adventure to readers of all ages." And there are traditions of knotting all over the world. We've only briefly touched on it here, but that is a quick tour of macrame and knotting. Sonia, what do you think?
I thought that was great. I love where there's all these connections to like old episodes we've done. So all the lace,
Yes.
like some similar authors from research books we've read, and the Victorians coming back, and another queen spreading a different type of art through England.
A lot of art.
Yeah.
I did not know that it was popular in the Victorian era at all, and I was shocked to find Sylvia's Book of Macrame Lace from the 1890s.
Yeah, I had no idea. It's kind of like zines, where like I always think of it as like a 90s thing, but there's actually this like much longer history and much, much longer than zine. But yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Have you done any macrame lately?
No, I've done friendship bracelets more recently.
I believe you used the Cavandoli knot when you made a friendship bracelet at the Eras tour.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Well, thank you so much for listening, and a huge thank you to Folkwear Patterns. Please visit folkwear.com today and sew something extraordinary.
So you can email us at handmadehistoryhost, HOSTS, @gmail.com. We'd love to hear your suggestions. And you can also check out our website, handmadehistorypodcast.com.
Thanks. Bye. Bip, 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 bip. And now back to the show.